So today we are going to be starting to work with glass, and we're going to be finding the best spots for each different piece within our designs. There we go. So that fits in that corner pretty well there. This tiny little shard of glass is big enough to work for a mosaic. So if there's tiny little bits that are maybe smaller than this, I wouldn't suggest using those, but anything about this size is totally fine as far as the smallest piece you can use. And so that you want to keep in mind the smaller pieces like this can be really pointy on the end there. So you want to make sure you're not handling it up at the top so much. So that can get poked into your skin pretty easily. So I'll stick that right about there. And so once you get a few pieces of glass that are arranged how you like them, you think they look good there, and they're spaced out about a quarter, or not a quarter, sorry, an 1/8 to a 1/16 of an inch, then you can start gluing things down. I outlined mine with Sharpie and I did it pretty thick so that all of these lines are probably, the thicker parts are probably about an 1/8 to a 1/16 of an inch. So I can use that as a guide to kind of see, okay, if I leave the amount of space that the thicker lines are, that will be enough space for the grout. So it's kind of a bit like a puzzle to kind of find the pieces that will fit best in an area. If you have any pieces that are too large and you need that color for a particular area, you can hang on to them, and you can always bring them in when we have more pickup days and I can cut them down smaller for you. So remember, you don't want to be trying to cut any of the glass yourself because glass is very picky about how it's cut. So you don't want to be crushing it or trying to break it up smaller. And then I have quite a bit of pieces that have flat edges to them. So I can find something maybe a little smaller that has a flat edge that will work for the edge of the mosaic. Because you don't want anything, especially any pointy parts, to be going off of the mosaic, off of the masonite material. So prioritizing the pieces that have a flat edge works really well for the flat edges of the masonite. So you want to fill the entire space eventually. So you want things to go all the way to the edge, but not past the edge. So if you're starting on a smaller area that is near the edge of the material, then I would suggest finding things that fit in the small corners and then finding things that fit on the edges, and then you can work your way inward to that shape. So I have something here for the point of the corner. I have this for the edge, and it fits pretty well with this curve. This has a bit of a curve that might work over there. Maybe. And so the Elmer's glue is what we're using to glue down the glass. So once you have an area arranged and you're sure that's where you want it, you can use Elmer's glue. You want to use just a small little bit on the back side and glue it down. You want to be putting the glue onto the glass. It works a lot better than just putting glue onto the masonite and then sticking the pieces down. You want to do just a little bit right on the back of the glass. For example, let's see, goes like that. So then I want to put it on the back side. So, oops. See, that was quite a bit of glue, but about that much is more than enough. Sometimes the glue comes out pretty quickly. So just enough to get it stuck down. And then I can just press it down a little bit. It's okay if a little bit kind of seeps out from underneath on the sides, but if it's a lot of it, then you want to kind of mop that up with a paper towel, napkin, so that it's not a whole lot of it. So I want to make sure it goes right up to the edge, but not over it. If any pieces go beyond it, you want to make sure that you are pushing it inward before it dries. Otherwise, if we have pieces that are sticking off the edge, especially pointy parts of it, that potentially when we have a finished piece, if you go to pick up the entire thing, you could potentially grab a hold of the edge that's sharp. And so we don't want to be cutting our hands later on either. So we want to make sure that the pieces are pretty flush with the edge. So if you still need to pick up glass and you are running low on Elmer's glue, make sure to let me know when you pick up the glass because we do have more glue. You just want a tiny little bit. It doesn't take much, oops, doesn't take much glue to get the glass to stick down. So I have my pieces here. Find some others. Lime green that'll fit. Do something like that, but then I have to fill in that space to create this curve. So maybe this might go down like that since it has a flat edge to it there. So I might actually need to make this hill a little bigger, I'm realizing. So I can always just extend the glass down farther into another area. I just want to make sure that I'm continuing the edge of the shape. So this hill here, if I make that bigger, I can take out a little bit of this lower hill here by extending them a little bit farther. But I want to make sure that I'm keeping that curve there so that it looks very hill-like. What does that look like there? So that might have a little bit of a larger gap because of the shape of the glass. We'll see how that works. Or maybe we can do, no, that piece doesn't work. It's a little bit of trial and error when you first set them down to kind of figure out what's going to work in a certain area. This is a little smaller. So maybe that there, that there. It goes down a little farther, that's fine. That piece isn't quite right. Maybe I put this one upward. No. So some of the glass depending on the color, has different colors on the back side of it. Like some of the dark green have this kind of reddish swirl on it. So in order to keep it consistent, you'll want to glue that side down so that it's more of the solid color. And then if you have any pieces that have any Sharpie marks on them, you can always, like this here has some Sharpie kind of residue on it. So you can either just glue that part down so that no one sees it, or you can try washing it off or trying to take it off with rubbing alcohol, or fingernail polish remover will take it right off if there's marks on both sides. But you can always just stick that side down. And the same if there's any kind of like papery residue on one side, you can just glue that side down. So I'm starting with a more challenging area since it's a really small hill area, but you can always start with something that's more simple and open. If you have all the glass colors you need for it, what really helps is to start with your focal point, especially if it's surrounded by a lot of different colors. So then if your focal point changes in size, like if my trailer gets smaller or bigger as I glue stuff down, if I decide to kind of move things up or down a little bit, then I can accommodate that with the background. So I can always put things around things a little bit easier than I can to make the background area and then try to get my focal point to fit into it. But you can make some adjustments as you go. And if you're working on one area and it's not quite working out, you can always move to a different part of it. Or if you don't quite have enough pieces that will fit that area, you can always wait till you have those and come back to that area. Or if you have mostly larger pieces and you need them cut down more, you can just set those aside and we'll get them cut down later. Like this piece is really big. It's gonna go in the sunset kind of sky area, so that's not that big of a deal. But if my green pieces were this big, I would need to set them aside to get cut down. So this piece actually fits pretty well right there. That piece, it's not quite gonna work there. I'll need to find another piece for this very corner, but I have most of that hill finished. So now I have a few of my colors laid out so that I can see them a little better. The turquoise especially has that kind of white swirly on it, which is fine if you want to use that facing up, but just know that sometimes when it gets cut up into small pieces, sometimes the swirls are a little larger and those white parts of it sometimes take up the whole thing. So if you want it to be really consistent, I'd suggest putting the solid part facing up. And if you're making any kind of curves like I am with this hill, or with any of the edge that's kind of curvy here, or any kind of circular areas, those work best made out of the smaller pieces. So if you have a variety of different sizes of one color, and you know that that color is going to be in some sort of curve or circle, then you want to prioritize the small pieces for anywhere that is really small, but also anywhere that has a curve to it. So a larger piece like this is going to not make as accurate of a curve as putting smaller pieces together to create a curve. So you can be a lot more precise with smaller pieces like these when it comes to curved edges or circles than you can with these larger pieces. So I know that this is going to be a bit of a tighter curve here, so I can arrange them, maybe not quite that one. That one can maybe be in the corner like that. This has a little bit more of a flat edge, so it can be more down at the bottom there. But you want to make sure that you're spacing them out about 1/8 of an inch to a 1/16 of an inch. So this piece is a lot bigger and has a flatter edge, so I'm going to put it down on the flatter edge of it, while these smaller pieces are on the curved area. Sometimes the pieces will have a shorter edge and a longer edge. So if it's longer, the longer part could go inward like this, because that smaller edge will help create that curve a little better than the longer edge would.